Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1274, 1274. Monday, or actually it's Tuesday for you watching this video. Tuesday, November the 3rd. Thank you so much for tuning in. Of course it is election day. Of course I'm making this video on Monday evening. It's about 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on election eve. And so this is my election day video. I guess the first thing I would say is that as I previously mentioned on my video from 2 days ago, I have filled out my electoral map. I completed it over the past weekend, and I have President Trump at 322 electoral votes. And there's 3 other states that were in play that I did not even put in his column. If those 3 states were to also go for Trump, he'd be in the upper 340s, somewhere in that range. But I'm sticking with 322, and I think I'll be very close. So I also said that I predicted that we would be +1 in the Senate, that we'd pick up 1 seat in the Senate, and I'm sticking with that. And I also said that I feel that we'll unfortunately come short of winning back the House. I think it's desperate that we need to do it. I think it's super important we need to do it. But again, I didn't want to do a video of hopes and dreams. I wanted to do a video where I think will actually occur. And it's tough to flip 20 seats, especially in an election where you have House candidates being outspent 2-3 to 1. There's a lot of big money coming in from Silicon Valley, coming in from God knows where, and we don't know where the money comes from. It goes into these super PACs, and that money is funneled into a lot of these local races. I mean, I looked at a lot of these congressional races, and and I came up with probably what I think are 6 that we will definitely flip. So I think we'll gain at least 6. We could gain as many as 10 or 11. There might be 10 or 11 we could flip, but I think it would require something pretty extraordinary to flip 20 seats, given the amount of money and the sort of demographics involved, I guess you would say. It would be pretty tough to do. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying it definitely won't happen. It's a possibility. Now, if Trump were to flip those other 3 states and end up with electoral college total of somewhere around in the high 340s, close to 350, you would be talking about some really high turnout. If Trump were to hit that 20% mark with black voters and close to 50% with Hispanic voters, something like that could trigger more than 20 seat flip in the House. So it is possible, but it would take something like that. It would take a really high percentage of the black vote, Hispanic vote. Turnout, I think, is a huge factor, and I think we can go with the turnout. I think Trump's turnout is going to be very, very high. I think every Trump supporter, every Trump voter is going to vote, unless they die on the way to the polls. There's nothing is going to stop a Trump voter from voting tomorrow. I should say today, as you're watching the video. So every Trump voter will vote. But again, you would have to have something fairly extraordinary, like a higher percentage of the black vote, Hispanic vote. That could then, because a lot of times people, if they vote for Trump for president, they're generally people will vote party line down the ticket. They didn't used to do that. This is something that's started happening, I guess, in the mid 90s, where people started voting real party line tickets. There was a time in this country where people liked divided government. They would vote for one party for president, and then they would vote for everybody else down the ticket, the opposite party. They liked divided government. But it seemed like since like the early 90s, people have a tendency to have been moved more toward, they vote party line, straight down the ticket, top to bottom, president down to local races. And that's been going on now for 25, 30 years. It's been trending that way, and I think it will continue to do that in this election as well. So if you have 20% of blacks and 45% of Hispanics come out and vote for President Trump, they're probably going to vote for Republicans down the ticket. Whereas these groups, particularly the black vote, would almost invariably vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. So that could swing more than 10 or 12 House seats. It could swing 20 House seats, maybe more. So you would have to have one of those kind of extraordinary type situations to set up to flip the House. I think it's a possibility. Where I would put it in percentages, I would say probably 20%. I think that's optimistic. 20%, I'd say, chance of flipping the House. I feel pretty good that we're going to hold on to the Senate. I think we'll gain a seat. Even though the popular consensus among the so-called professionals is that we're going to lose a seat. But I believe that we are going to pick up a seat. And we'll gain our increase our majority in the Senate by 1 vote. And that's extremely important. I'd rather have the Senate than the House, given my choice. So anyway, that's kind of where my election prediction is for what I think is going to happen. 322 electoral votes for President Trump. We hold the Senate, gain 1 seat, and we pick up 6 to 10, maybe 11 or 12 seats in the House, but don't take control of the House. That's pretty much where I'm at, and I've been there for several days now. So I guess the most interesting thing that's going on with me in the last 2 to 3 days specifically is I don't know that I've ever, in fact I know for a fact, I've never had so many people contact me on text messages, emails, phone calls. Friends of mine who are calling me looking for support. They are terrified that Trump's going to lose, not because he's going to lose the vote, but because there's going to be a rigged election, something like that the election is going to be stolen in the courts, mail-in ballots, all these sorts of things. Excuse me. Well, one way to prevent all that is to have a landslide win. But it is, something I've never experienced before. I've got my sister for the past 2 weeks. She's literally said she can't sleep. Her stomach's in knots. She's so nervous she can't focus on anything. She's terrified, and I'm doing my best to calm her nerves and tell her, it's going to be fine. Trump's going to win or whatever. I'm having friends call me, text me. They're terribly concerned about, the election's going to be rigged. Voting machines are going to be rigged. Riots. They're going to, attack the White House. I mean, I'm hearing all kinds of things. So I don't have a crystal ball or anything like that. But I guess let me try to give you my own common sense feelings on all this. First of all, this rumor I keep hearing that Antifa or various groups affiliated with them are going to literally attack the White House, take over the White House, and things like that. I mean, I expect that there will be protests and things and such around the White House, and there will be protests. I certainly expect that. I mean, I think that's been in the works, been planned in the works. Depending on what city you live in will depend on how well that's handled or how bad it gets. I don't expect where I live that there's going to be anything like that going on. Now, if you live in a blue city, a state with a Democrat mayor or governor, you can probably expect that. Maybe if you live in a city like New York, a big city, Los Angeles, maybe where these types of groups like to do their work, I think you could expect that to happen. These people riot when their football team wins a world championship or the basketball team wins a championship. People riot for a lot of reasons. We saw the riots all summer long. They're not going away anytime soon. So yes, there will probably be protest, riots, Antifa, whatever. There'll probably be that kind of thing. But as far as this crazy fear that some people have been telling me about that they're going to overtake the White House, that is not going to happen. That is not going to happen. Okay, the White House is very, very well protected. They're quite aware of the situation, various threats, and things like that. I can assure you that they'll have some kind of fencing that they'll put up. They have, literally, I don't know the number, but it's many, many Navy SEALs up on the roof of the White House with 50 cals, semi-automatic weapons, grenades, smoke canisters. They have They can call F-15s, they can call helicopters, attack helicopters within 5 minutes away. I mean, depending on how much firepower they need to bring into the fight, that they can do it. They probably got hundreds and hundreds of National Guard already there on site. They've got the president, of course, could call in the military if he wanted to. I don't think that'll be necessary, but don't worry, the White House is not going to be. And I'm telling you, these people who think that they're going to do that, if you actually do get onto the White House lawn and start running towards the White House, a group of people like they're going to go into the White House, the guys up on the roof will shoot you. They will shoot you, absolutely. So these people who think they're going to charge into the White House, they're going to end up getting their brains blown out on the lawn. And once a few people see that, they'll stop running up on the lawn. So yeah, they will shoot you in a situation like that. They have orders to shoot to kill. So they have plenty of defenses to defend the White House. So that you're not going to see the White House overrun. It hasn't happened since the War of 1812. But they didn't have that much firepower back in 1812 we have now. The White House can perfectly well be defended. I'm not concerned about that. If you live in a blue city, a blue state, you might want to exercise extra caution tomorrow. I'd recommend, if you haven't already voted and you're going to vote on Election Day, go vote in the daylight. Most precincts are going to have police protection around them. Go vote and go home. I wouldn't go out to any of the restaurant districts and do some drinking or anything like that, because you could end up with some problems. So I would say go vote and go home. And practice just general personal security. So on that front, again, I expect there will be riots and protests and things like that, but I don't think it's going to be anything that we haven't seen so far. So I think most cities, I think, that expect that they could have something like that there, they've probably already made preparations for that, I would think. They already have, the cops, the National Guard are already on call. I think that they're fully prepared. I would be surprised if any city mayor or governor, state governor, is caught off guard. I think they all know that this is a situation they probably already prepared, have plans in place for anything that might happen like that. I think they're expecting it, and I think we will see it to some extent. As far as the rigging the election, okay, so that's a wide, general, broad term. Rigging the election, that could mean a lot of things. Obviously, the biggest fear is someone actually being able to, tap into the voting machines and change votes. That would be something that would frighten me. I don't know if that's possible. I've heard it is. I've heard that we have technologies that can do that, and then we might even do that in foreign countries. I don't know. That could be propaganda. Who knows? There's always some degree of election fraud. I mean, we always have, Democrats voting twice, dead Democrats voting 8 times. We always have a certain amount of election fraud. But generally, unless it is like a very local race where you're only talking about thousands of votes, it doesn't always have that big of an impact. Not that it couldn't change an election, because it certainly can and has. Lyndon Johnson would be a good case example to study. But I think that we are probably better at that than we were back in the 50s and 60s. I think actually it was probably worse in the past. I think we're probably getting better at it, and probably having less of it. As far as like a mass rigging of the election, it's certainly possible, but I think it's not that you can't do the rigging, it's that you got to get away with it. And rigging the election and getting away with rigging the election is another thing, because the guy you rig the election against is not just going to take it. The people in the voting district who believe that something may have happened are not just going to sit back and take it. They're going to be, on somebody's lawn the next day or around some government building protesting hard. People don't just sit back and allow, if they really believe that there was something that went on with their election, that you're going to see massive, the other side's going to protest, I guess you would say. You're going to see people really don't go for that. So it's a very tricky enterprise when you're trying to rig or fix an election. And again, in local elections and small elections, you can kind of do that. But in a large national election, it's a very tricky thing to do. You have people from both parties there involved in the election process. It's not just one party, running everything. It's purposely you have people from both sides. So it's harder to do than you think. Again, there's always a certain level of, things like that going on. This election, probably more than any election I can think of, there's a lot of people, a lot of lawyers, a lot of poll watchers, a lot of people watching very, very carefully. It's people are looking for it. It's not like it's going to happen and people, are going to be caught off guard. No one's going to be caught off guard. People who understand how these processes work, there are people in place from the Republicans and the Democrats have their own people in place to safeguard every precinct in this country. It's really hard to pull something off like that. It would have to involve a pretty in-depth, large conspiracy to pull something like that off and get away with it. Pulling it off is one thing, getting away with it's another. For example, if they were to announce the day after the election that Biden won the district I live in, yeah, there would be big problems because everyone knows who lives in this district. We all know this is a hardcore 80% registered Republican district. If a district that's registered 80% Republican votes 70% or 60% Democrat, there's going to be a lot of people asking questions. Okay? So we already know, they already know pretty much how many people, are registered as this or that. How many registered voters they have. They know who's voted, who hasn't voted. All that data is available. So you're working around the margins. And in a close election, it could make a difference. And that's why you don't want to have a close election. I do believe that Trump's going to win in a fairly large manner, and that should alleviate a lot of these potential problems. A very close election could certainly trigger a lot of court challenges like we saw with Bush versus Gore. And I expect in everywhere where we have a really close, every precinct or every voting district where it is very, very close, I expect there will be legal challenges on both sides. Both Republicans, Trump, Democrats, they already have thousands and thousands of lawyers already waiting to file lawsuits. The day after the election, there are going to be many lawsuits filed. Okay? Anywhere where it was close, they're going to want recounts. So whether or not we know who won the election on election night is not 100%. Again, this is why we must go out and win big. I mean, if Trump wins in a landslide, and he's not just winning these places by small numbers, or if he's winning districts that normally are predominantly Democrat, that may cause Democrats to want to challenge the vote. Wait a minute, hey, this is a district like 70% Democrats. Trump won it. Oh, there's a problem with that. We want to go back and check that. Well, let them go back and check it. Maybe they'll find out that a lot of Democrats like Trump. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. We all want the election results on the night of the election, but in a close election, you're going to have challenges. In a landslide election, not so much, because it won't matter. You're not going to find a situation where a landslide election where you're going to say, well, they cheated everywhere. They cheated in every voting district all across the country, and we had all this cheating going on. That's really hard, to do and get away with. So I would say, just to calm your fears, some out there, don't get too freaked out about this. Yes, there's going to be some rioting. There's going to be some protests. There's going to be some issues. Expect that to happen. Yes, there is always some degree of funny business, some fuckery, if you will, that goes on around elections. It's always happened. It always will happen. There's going to be some cheating going on. And yes, if you have some places where there was really close, yes, you're going to have demands for recounts. But as far as one giant challenge to the overall election is not going to happen, what you're looking at is many smaller challenges. the courts, for the most part, have ruled in favor of Trump. He's won, I think, 70 or 80%. Unfortunately, there have been some judges who have ruled to allow some states to wait 3 days to count votes, like in Pennsylvania, I think it's 7 days or something. So it's unfortunate, but this was why it was so important to get Amy Coney Barrett on the court. And so we have a pretty solid majority on the court. So if, in fact, this election ends up in the courts, it'll probably go all the way to the Supreme Court. And they will do this very quickly. They're not going to be kicking it around for weeks and weeks and weeks. They understand that, you can't do that with a national election, because all while you're doing it, there's, civil unrest happening and tensions building and pressures building. They want to bring these things to a conclusion as quickly as possible. So you'll see these cases, if they're going to go to the Supreme Court, they'll get there very quickly, in a matter of days, not weeks. And I don't expect that will happen. Again, I'm expecting Trump to win so big, over 300 electoral votes, that, the court challenges are not going to change the outcome. The only way that they would go all the way to the Supreme Court is if they thought it would change the outcome. And that would mean, 3, 4, 5 states they would have to get to turn, to flip, to change the results. And the court would have to rule on that. And the courts does not want to rule on changing something like that. If you can find voter fraud, or you can prove something happened, that's a different story. You also have to remember that Trump is the president. He's not the incumbent. He's not the challenger. He is the sitting president. It's his attorney general. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Barr. He's lost my confidence for the most part, but Attorney General Barr is watching this very closely too, and he has a role to play in this as well. So I would not get overly bent out of shape at this point. I do expect there'll be some riots, there'll be some protests, there will be some legal challenges, and some of these challenges may go all the way up to the Supreme Court. I do expect things to be expedited very quickly. Ultimately, what I do expect is that Trump will win, and he'll win in such overwhelming fashion that it will suck a lot of the wind out of the sails of a lot of the efforts that are obviously in the works to challenge the election. There's a lot of rhetoric coming out of the Democrats, Biden himself saying, well, I'm not going to concede the election. Well, if you get your ass kicked, and we know by 10 o'clock at night that you got your ass kicked in Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, yeah, you probably will concede. Yeah, you probably will, because you look stupid if you didn't. So I think there's a lot of crazy talk going on around out here. So just maintain, be calm, go vote, and if we take care of our business, I think Trump wins so big that any of these other things fade away and just really never actually materialize. I do, however, believe that the Democrats, I think that they know that they're going to lose. I think they've known they're going to lose for a long time. They may have thought COVID may have, swung things, but I think for the most part, Biden's not the type of character you run if you're really trying to win. Okay, so they threw Biden out there as a throwaway. They're thinking about 2024. So I don't think it was ever really on the radar to win the election. I think they've assumed Trump re-election. COVID maybe gave them some new energy to think things could change, but they ended up with a bad field, and they ended up with Biden. Not the guy you would put out there if you really wanted a winning racehorse. Biden's not your guy. So I think they pretty well assumed that. I think the plan for the Democrats is the exact same plan they've been running since day one, which is to delegitimize Trump. So I think most of the efforts that you see talk about election rigging, challenging, going to the courts, not conceding, all this stuff has a lot more to do with delegitimizing Trump's election rather than trying to overturn it or anything like that. I don't think they seriously believe they're going to overturn the election. I think what their primary objective is just fuckery. It's just fuckery to delegitimize Trump. I think that's all they've really got, is the delegitimization of Trump's first and second terms, to delegitimize his entire 8 years, I think. And of course, if they hold on to the House, they'll try to impeach him again. So that won't stop. They may try 2 more times, 3 more times. So until the last day that Trump walks out of his office, up until the last day at the end of his second term, they will be continuing to delegitimize, impeach, destroy, dismantle, dismember, whatever term you want to use. I think that that's the ultimate plan. It's not that they really believe they're going to beat Trump. It's not they really believe they're going to get overturned by the courts. It's not that they believe, they're going to chase him out of the White House with Antifa. It's not that they believe any of that shit will actually happen. It's that all of this is a narrative that they know that the media will help them push, which will help them to do what they ultimately want to do, which is delegitimize Trump and make it more difficult for him to succeed and hopefully hurt other Republicans in races where it is close, where it is like a purple state, where it could go Republican or Democrat, and they can use this type of stuff to try to swing a few seats here and there. And I think mostly they're focused on the Senate. I think they feel like they have a pretty good shot at holding the House, and that if they can win the Senate, they can impeach Trump, because they got the House, they can bring the impeachment papers, and they got the Senate, they can now actually, get him impeached. It was Republicans in the Senate that kept him from being impeached. If they take the Senate, then they don't have to worry about getting rid of him through election fraud or anything else. They can impeach him and remove him from office by controlling both houses of Congress. That is what I think that they're probably really thinking about, is win back the Senate, hold on to the House, and go to delegitimize the president and beat on him. And if they do win the Senate back and they have the House, they can go immediately for impeachment. And I think that this is the best case scenario the Democrats can hope for. I don't think they seriously believe they're going to beat Trump. But again, as I've said, every bit of this entire plot, this entire thing, it can all be completely obliterated by simply having Trump win in an overwhelming fashion. An overwhelming fashion electoral college win. And, if he gets like 325, 330 electoral votes, he might even win the popular vote. So, I would say just everybody just calm down, relax, go out and vote, come home, watch the election returns. Expect there is going to be some controversy. There will be lawsuits. There will be all these sorts of things. But hopefully we get a Trump big victory, a big win, 300 electoral votes or more, which is pretty much considered an electoral college landslide when you get over 300. And a lot of these things go away. And I think the most important thing, first, Trump winning in a fairly big way, over 300 electoral votes, and holding on to the Senate. I think that those are the 2 key things to focus on. Everything else is just noise. It's going to happen regardless of what we do anyway. Yeah, there's going to be riots. There's going to be some funny business going on. Focus on the big prize. Trump winning 300 plus electoral votes, holding on to the Senate. That is the 2 things to be focused on. If we do those 2 things, we're going to be fine. Because if these things do end up in the courts, they're not going to be drug out for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. They're going to bring this thing to conclusion pretty quickly. And of course, we now have a majority on the Supreme Court, a pretty handy majority. I'd say 5-4. I don't consider Roberts a conservative, so I don't put him on our team. He will vote against Trump every chance he gets. So, but I still think we have a strong 5-4 court, and that's why it was so important to get Amy Coney Barrett on the court, and that's what they were thinking when they did that. So, anyway, watch the Senate races, watch the election results come in. As I said, we'll have a very good idea of whether or not we are looking at a fairly large landslide election for Trump. If we see those southern Miami-Dade County, look at the number of votes. I don't think he'll win Broward County, but I think if he cuts into 10 points into what the Democrats normally get, they normally get in the 65% range in Broward County. If they only get 50%, that would trigger a landslide win for Trump. watch Ohio, watch Pennsylvania, and watch Florida. Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Florida are going to tell you pretty much the entire story. And we know about Ohio, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Florida pretty early on in the night, before 10 o'clock usually. Now, don't worry when you're watching Ohio. When you're watching Ohio and Florida, keep in mind, you always get the Democrat areas first. I'm not really sure why. I think it may have to do with the time zone or just the way the votes are counted. But Ohio will always show Democrats winning early because they always, for whatever reason, show the votes in the north in Ohio. And the northern part of Ohio is pretty solid blue. But once you get into central and southern Ohio, it starts getting redder and redder and redder, and the farther south you go, the farther red it gets. To where you get down to where I live, I live 25 minutes from the Ohio-Kentucky border, So, and very far to the west. I can be in Kentucky in 25 minutes. I can be in Indiana in 25, 30 minutes. I live in the very southwestern part of Ohio. Solid red down here. So don't worry about the early returns in Ohio if they start coming in early. Watch for the southern part of Ohio. The same as it's actually flip in Florida. In Florida, it's the southern part of Florida that's generally pretty solid blue, and as farther north you get, the more red it gets. So keep that in mind as you're watching these come in. As far as Pennsylvania's kind of east and west. Pennsylvania, Trump's biggest support is going to come from the western, north and western and southwestern, and I'm not sure how those returns come in, so I can't really remember. But anyway, that's what you want to focus on. Don't anybody freak out. It's not time to freak out yet. If freaking out is required, we'll go ahead and do that. But at this time, it's not required. But I will say that I can't remember ever being involved in going through an election where I've had so many people, friends and family, contact me, to tell me how seriously in fear they are and nervous and freaking out. I mean, basket case type phone calls I'm getting and emails and text about people really, really worried that the election is going to be stolen, rigged, taken in the courts, this and that, the other thing, riots, all these things. Look, things are what they are. What's going to happen is going to happen. Trump is perfectly aware of the situation. He has thousands of lawyers too. Both sides have a lot of lawyers out there. It's really hard to rig an election and get away with it. Keep that in mind. Like I say, I think just maintain, be calm, get out and vote, and let's see what happens. And we'll wake up on Wednesday morning, and we'll see where it stands, and we'll go from there and keep doing what we're doing. But ultimately, the president's going to win, and we're going to win. We can either win easy or we can win hard. It's up to the other side how they want to play it. But we're all in, so is the president, for whatever we need to do to make sure that we have a fair election and that the desire of the people is carried out. And we will make sure that happens. You will, I will, the president will, and that's where we are. So you guys enjoy the election, and let's all prepare ourselves for a big Trump victory. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you guys. Bye.